Hello and welcome to this debate session. I'll be acting as the timekeeper for this debate. We will start the debate shortly, but first I will explain how this debate session will be undergoing and will be held. We will have two groups, the affirmative group and the negative group. Each of the groups consists of 3 members, and the debate will be run as the first speaker of each group will deliver his or her best argument for the group and can provide some data about it, and then continues with the second speaker of the group. The second speaker of the group can also enforce the argument for the first speaker, also can provide more data or make another argument, and the third speaker of the group will do the same, but he or she at the end of the argument must include the conclusion of the group's arguments. Each of the speaker will have a time limit of 5 minutes. Longer than that, the timekeeper will ask him or her to stop and back to his or her seat. We won't have independent rebuttal session, but in return, rebuttal part of the argument can be uttered and include after the first speaker of each group has delivered his or her arguments. So the rebuttal part of the argument can be included starting on the second speaker, and that is how this debate will be undergoing. We now can start this debate session. The first speaker of the affirmative group, you may begin.
So I asked the first speaker for the positive team will explain my opinion why rape victims should not be blamed in rape cases. So in my opinion, victim blaming should not be done because the act of victim blaming have very bad impact for the victim itself. As we all know, rape victims must have bad mental stability, and victim blaming can worsen their mental condition. Rape victims who are in the phase of recovering their mental health cannot accept all of the negative pressure that is put on them. All that negative pressure can make them stressed, and if they are stressed, they can hurt themselves, and it can even make them commit to suicide because they could no longer stand with the pressure. Victim blaming also have the other bad effect to the victim. Victim blaming can make the victim speechless or unwilling to share their problem with the other people. They will feel afraid of being blamed by people for an accident they don't even want it to happen. So as we can see, there are many rape cases that occur in Indonesia. Even on television, there are at least 2 or 3 news about rape cases that are reported every day. According to the National Commission on Violence Against Women, sexual violence in Indonesia has increased sharply over the past 12 years. In 2016 until 2018, there were 8,797 cases that occurred or approximately 8 women were raped every day. Of course, this is bad news, and I'm sure that there are actually more rape cases happening in Indonesia, but the victims do not want to speak up about their problem because they feel afraid of being blamed or even ostracized and shunned by their neighbor, or they are afraid their problem will tarnish their family name. Actually, this is a big problem because if there are many victim blaming in society, it will cause many victims refuse to to talk about their problem related to sexual violence. Indirectly, it can also encourage many people to commit sexual violence because they feel that their action not not be known and they will not be catched by the police. Of course, this will increase the number of rape cases in Indonesia and make Indonesia as an unsafe, unsafe country for women. If there are still many women in Indonesia who do not dare to speak up about their problem of sexual violence they experienced, they then the police will find it difficult to reveal and arrest the perpetrators of sexual violence. So stop blaming the victim. It would be better if you help the victim to recover for, from their mental health and then blame them, which will make them more stressed. Thank you.
Okay, that's enough for the first speaker of the affirmative team. Now, the turn is for the first speaker of the negative team. You may begin.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I, as the first speaker of the negative team, will portray our opinion, which states that perpetrators of rape are not always wrong for a case that we certainly know sexual harassment. More specifically, I will represent things related to dress that have been explained earlier. Of course, rape victims will continue to increase over and over again every year. This thing couldn't happen if there's no cause behind it. We all exactly know current fashion trends. Today's, today's teenagers prefer to wear clothes that tend to be open because they follow the current trend of fashion, which they tend to make Western as a kibla for everything, especially fashion itself. However, let's just look out there. It doesn't rule out the possibility that even though she already wears hijab, she is still a victim of sexual harassment. In fact, not infrequently those women who wear hijab also impact men because even though they've been covered by the dresses they wear, the curves of their bodies are still visible, either because the dresses are too tight or they are deliberately made like that. In this case, still fashion causes this to happen. Whereas if you are Muslim, of course you know the good and the manners dress supposed to be according to the Islamic religion. That was a big mistake too. So in our opinion, dress is also what invites men to look to women. But there are more victims who do not cover their body that basically should be covered well as a matter of fact. Then related to some people tend to focus more on the victim. Of course, that is a natural thing to happen because let's say there will be no fish if there's no bait to lure it out. Well, I mean, bait here is the way they dress and even the way they behave. If their attitude is flirtatious to men, then that can also be the reason why they are victims of rape. I just want to provide a detail that there's a proverb saying that none other than they themselves who bait their prey. Moreover, as I said earlier, everything happens with a reason. There should be a cause behind it. And women should be more aware and guard themselves. If there is someone who acts like weirdo or strange or inappropriate, then they should immediately avoid it because actually we can see what they'll do for us through the behavior of the perpetrator. Maybe women wouldn't have been raped if they had anticipated earlier about the things that could have caused the rape to exist. And also, I want to explain a little about why humans have a tendency to blame the victim. So, based on my research, one physiological phenomenon that contributes to this tendency to lay the blame on the victim is known as the fundamental attribution error. This verse involves attributing other people's behaviors to internal, personal characteristics, what may external forces and variables that also might have played a role. Another issue that contributes to our tendency to blame the victim is known as the hindsight bias. When we look at an event that happened in the past, we have a tendency to believe that we should have been able to see the signs and predict the outcome. This hindsight makes it seem like the victims of a crime, accident, or another form of misfortune should have been able to predict and prevent whatever problem might have been falling through. And this is just something that happens when we are looking at things such as rape or assault. I think that's all for me as a first negative speaker. I give the time back to the timekeeper. Thank you.
We continue. Now it's time for the second speaker of the affirmative team. You may begin your argument. Alright, I will give my arguments for the second speaker for the affirmative team. I will start from the continuing with Mr. Faris said earlier. Victim blaming, in my opinion, is ridiculous because of reasons, of course. You can say whatever you want for blaming the rap victim, but something about the trivial matter that it's just ridiculous, like a dress or something. That almost seems like you want to defend the not the victim but the perpetrator or the rapist itself. Yes, I say itself, not himself. We all know that Faris said about some cases about the rap cases in the Indonesia first, and maybe some of you may regard it as the too specific for the case that big as the rap itself. So here's my thing. It sounds like a blaming. It's just to fulfill your I don't know, something like ego or something to justify yourself that no, I had a woman, so yes, she must be she must be blamed or something. Oh, and before I started continuing on this my argument, did I hear about the attribution bias or something? Well, I give applause for you. I just want to ask, what side are you on? Okay, I won't be right about the dress or bait or something like that, but mostly bait about the rap victim that used to lure the rapist to rap herself. No, it's in my opinion it's already outrageous, so I will leave at that. Let's talk about the physiology here. Here's I found some data about the rap cases. This is according to Dr. Samuel Dismitiman, an U.S. clinical psychologist, and here's I quote from his work that was published on the 1970s. Here's I quote. It sounds that therapists don't regard the rape cases very seriously or something important, as the rapist itself seemed to be not concerned about their wrongdoing. When Dr. Samuel interviewed the rapist in the 1970s, he perplexed. He found that the rapist itself doesn't concern about their doing. It just they almost I don't know, something like they did that because they can, not because something else, because they just can, and then they do rap. So from this we can know for sure. Yes, that's sure. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, here's my verdict about the blaming rap victims thing. You can blame whatever you want, be it the victim, perpetrator, the rapist, or something. It's your right. It's human right. Of course, you can do it whatever you want. But if the question may, question marks, of course not. Victims don't have a chance to participate in the rape cases in the first place. They are forced to participate as the victims of the rape. So, blaming victims of rape because of triviality, well, I'll give you another example. Well, for the audience who watch this, look at yourself. Why don't you blaming yourself for not being included in this petition? I know you have one or two things to add on. So that's my point. It's different. So it's just be can be put it together as the same thing, and that's it. It's more or less the argument that I want to give to you all. And I leave that in your active imagination about should why we should not blame the victims of rape in the first place. Thank you. Moving on, now it turns for the second speaker of the negative theme. You may begin your arguments.
Regarding Devia's statement that not all women are sensitive to the movements around them and not all perpetrators show signs clearly, I believe that all women are responsible for their own bodies. That is why the point that Alvina said before is true. Women should not wear or do something that inviting men to assault them. As we know, some women also posted photos of them on social medias with those too revealing dresses and clothes with inviting poses that can make men who saw that wanted to stalk or even assault them. Fishermen won't catch a fish without a bait. There is no smoke without fire, and there will be no consequences without causes. If those women didn't do something that made men wanted to assault them, then there wouldn't be any cases such as sexual assault. Since women has the right to do anything with their own bodies, I believe that they need to understand that they have to protect and take care of their bodies in any situations so there won't be any incidents that happened under control such as sexual assault. In some cases of sexual assault, the victims happen to not fight back even though they had the chance to do so. Sometimes they speak up about the harassment that they received long time after it happened, and that can make people conclude that they actually enjoyed it on the first time. If it happened consensually, then it is not right to say that it was a sexual harassment. This is why it is important for everyone to be aware of their surroundings. If they notice something strange around them which make them feel uncomfortable, then they should immediately seek for protection. The other important thing to prevent sexual assault is by going somewhere with companion and not alone. So it will be a lot safer since mostly sexual assault happen when the victims are alone. In some countries, there are also different cultures that make this kind of incident quite ambiguous. As we know, in Western countries, it is natural to greet your friends or relatives with little peck on cheeks and hugs, while in Eastern countries, some cases like that might be inappropriate, and of course, it can be concluded as a harassment for some people. Sexual harassment itself is still being debated among people. Women should be responsible to protect themselves. They can ask help to family or friends if they happen to need to go somewhere alone, or they can bring protection anywhere they can, such as pepper spray.
2 minutes left.
The PKS, which in Indonesia, RUU PKS, which handle about sexual harassment, is still not legalized yet. Since there is no exact constitution nor policy about sexual assault or sexual harassment, it is right to say that women are responsible for their own bodies. If they don't want this to happen around and continuously, then women should be responsible to not cause the fire. They need to be aware and should not try to invite any assault in any way possible, including dressing in a way too revealing so everyone can see their curves, or doing poses and seducing men or inviting men to assault them. An exclusive survey conducted for The Independent found 55% of men believed that the more revealing the clothes a woman wears, the more likely it is that she will be harassed or assaulted. And also, the research by polling company Decipher found men are markedly more likely to hold this view than women.
1 minute.
Women with 40% of female respondents subscribing to the view that revealing clothing invites unwanted sexual advances. If women happen to do something inviting for men to assault them, then it is right to say that it was also their fault for causing sexual harassment to happen. That's all from me. Thank you.
Moving on into the third part of this debate, the third speaker for the affirmative team, you may begin your arguments and give your conclusion about it.
Okay, my name is Askian Huda, and I want to give you my opinion about the rape cases in Indonesia. As we know, the law often provides products that sometimes cannot give us a solution to social problems in a country. In Indonesia, cases of rape are often under the spotlight in public, and often the victims who should be protected by the law are not fully protected. The National Commission for Women recorded that there were at least 46,698 cases of sexual violence against women, both in the personal and public sphere during 2011 until 2019. And even the National Commission for Women said that every 2 hours there are at least 3 women in Indonesia who experience the sexual violence. And the National Commission for Women Commissioner Andi Yantriani said from 2011 until 2019, her organization had received 23,021 cases of sexual violence in the community, the part of its reporting of rape type violence. Rape of 19,039 cases in the largest type of sexual violence, and he said in his written statement. From this data source, we can see that the legal products in Indonesia cannot go deeper and protect the whole society from all forms of sexual violence, where the legal product should protect the community, especially the victims who sometimes become the object of bullying in the community. When viewed from 1945 Constitution, that everyone, including victims of rape, has the right to live a life worthy of physical and spiritual prosperity, according to Article 28H of the 1945 Constitutions, has the right to protection of personal, family, honor, dignity, and property. Everyone, including victims of rape, has the right to live a life worthy of physical and spiritual prosperity, according to Article 28H of the 1945 Constitutions, has the right to protection of personal, family, honor, dignity, and property. Article 28G, paragraph 1, 1945, has the right to live, not to be tortured, the right to freedom of thought and conscience, to have the right to religion which cannot be reduced under any circumstances. Article 28 I, paragraph 1 of the 1945 Constitutions. And victims clearly receive protection by the law to have a physical and mentally prosperous life, personal protections of their family, honor, dignity of their property, and etc., and the right not to be tortured, to live in peace, freedom of mind and consciences, to have the right to have religion, and that cannot be reduced under any circumstances. Some conclude from the statement of Faris and Adam that all legal proceeds should protect the rights of victims to be defended and protect against all bullying among the general public, because the impact of sexual violence that has been experienced victims is exacerbated by bullying among society will only add the traumatic disturbance that leads to physical violence by the victims, such as suicide and etc. So, when the victims has received clear protection from the law and the community should be able to stop all the bullying and participate together in protecting the rights of victims of rapes. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
The last speaker of this debate session, the third speaker for the negative theme, you may begin your arguments and give your conclusion about it.
Okay, as the third speaker of the negative team, I have to point out how the affirmative team kept mentioning how irrelevant the victim's dress and behavior to the cases. They indirectly stated no matter what they wear nor do won't protect them from sexual harassment. And actually, if they keep on thinking that way, people will start to assume that it's fine to wear something that reveals their body and act whatever they like without concerning how the others will get attracted to sexually harass them. The number of rape cases will keep on increasing if people decided to have this kind of mindset. Besides, people shouldn't be relying so much on the laws. Laws won't guarantee people to be safe from sexual harassment, just like the law that settled how the killer's punishment if they killed someone. Does it stop the murder cases in our country? The answer is no. We'll keep on running on cycle, and the best way to prevent the unexpected things is to keep a closer look at almost everything in this world. This world is never a safe place to live. And that's being said, our first speaker explained how teenagers tend to choose the trendy style instead of the proper dressing one. They choose to wear something that exposes their body curves or some parts that should be covered properly. And that is not good because, according to AB and the others, those revealing those revealing clothes are slit skirt, low cut blouse, and high heel without a slit. And the non-revealing ones is like a skirt without a slit and a top button to the neck and high heel high high boots. And if people still get sexually harassed and even they dress properly, they should pay attention to how their attitude. People who being flirty will attract the others to do something to them. That's why victims should think once again about the two matters that mentioned before. Our first speaker also inclined how the victim should increase their awareness to protect themselves. Our second speaker added some points about the revealing outfits that they wear and posing with some kind of inviting poses. According to the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin study, people might get aroused with the seductive poses they see. The study is strengthened by a psychologist named how can trigger brain activity that makes those people see their victims as a prey. And our second speaker also pointed out the cultural differences that led us to the various interpretation of sexual harassment, which inclined to which kind of linked to the delayment of establishing RUU PKS in Indonesia. It gives people no other choices besides improving our self-protection. That the fact that we can't control the other's mind should give us awareness of how crucial it is to protect ourselves from the other people. Aforementioned laws won't guarantee the victim will heal properly from their trauma nor prevent the other incidents that will happen in the future. Just to reflect on how we dress and attitudes and improving our sense are the main keys to be safe from sexual harassment and rape cases. If people keep on being ignorant and got sexually harassed, don't they deserve to be blamed as well? Like this problem will keep happening if people don't put much consent on their body. Your body is purely your responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, with that, it marks our session for this debate. The result of this debate session will be announced later. And thank you for participating in this debate session.